Coming up on NEWS2, a fire claims the life of a man. All Saints Cathedral School students evacuated and multiple government agencies respond to a fire on St. Thomas's Garden Street early this afternoon. Fire investigators are now sifting through the rubble. And
massive government spending cuts set to kick in. President Obama meets with top congressional leaders.
Meanwhile, how will the territory be impacted? Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us on this edition of NEWS2. I'm Sandra Romancing, and our top story: fire investigators spent much of Friday afternoon sifting through the rubble of a Commandant Gada house in St. Thomas to determine the cause and origin of a blaze which consumed the house's interior and claimed the life of an adult male. Alongside the arson investigators are police forensics officers who are working to determine whether foul play was a factor in the death of the unidentified man. Assistant Fire Services Director Daryl George said Friday that 4 firefighting apparatus and 10 firefighters responded from the Fort Christian and Fortuna fire stations to the 1:15 p.m. call for assistance. At the scene, firefighters found the part wood, part masonry structure engulfed in flames. He listed the physical address of the house as number 10 OV Commandant Gada. Administration officials at All Saints Cathedral School evacuated the campus as a safeguard. The school sits just north of the fire scene. No other structure was threatened or involved in the blaze. An autopsy will determine the cause of death and confirm the identity of the man who perished in this afternoon's fire.
The fire was brought under control within 10 to 15 minutes. Upon further investigation, a body was found of an adult male. The arson prevention and the VIPD forensic and investigation unit was there working together to find the cause and origin of the fire. All Saints School was also evacuated as a precautionary measure. The removal of the body was conducted by the morgue attendant, and the investigators continued to comb through the rubble to find the cause and origin. The victim has not been identified, and the Virgin Islands Fire Service is still on scene determining the cause and origin. The firefighters were coming from a training at Megan's Bay when they got the call on top of the hill by Louisiana House Castle. So that was one of the complaints a lot of the residents were saying, but they didn't know the units were out on a training mission. But they got there very quickly. Once they were on scene and the operation began, the fire was totally knocked down very quickly.
Be sure to count on NEWS2 to keep you updated. With the sequester budget cuts set to kick in later today, how will the territory be impacted? The automatic cuts, known in Washington as the sequester, were designed to be severe enough to force lawmakers to reach a budget deal, except they haven't. Therefore, cuts will be made across the board, affecting nearly every department. NEWS2's Erica Bivens reports.
Although the VI Bureau of Economic Research is still crunching numbers, they say the latest sequester budget cuts will impact the most vulnerable in society. In a phone conference Thursday, Director Wharton Berger said so far they've only analyzed the expense side for 2013.
We're looking at a bare minimum of about 10 to 12 million for the territory. I'm sure that there'll be some modifications or changes that we have to put in place.
Berger says the VI will lose over $10 million each year through fiscal year 2021, totaling over $100 million. In their impact analysis, it states federal spending will impact education, human services, and transportation systems almost immediately. And further, these impacts are in addition to the current 5% cut in government fiscal year 2013 operating budget, a growing unfunded pension liability, and ever-increasing health care and mental health costs. A look at the numbers shows education will reduce federal grant funding by $2.6 million, human services by $1.7 million, including over $700,000 for Head Start and $1.6 million for Public Works. Now, there are exemptions and special rules for many programs. However, the analysis says indirect costs to Virgin Islanders remains unclear, as many program cuts are difficult to estimate at this time.
Once we get past March 1 and there's some changes in terms of how it affects the Virgin Islands budget going forward, we'll actually do some more analysis.
However, officials do know the VI faces a 9.4% reduction in defense-related federal funding and 8.2% cut for non-defense government entities receiving federal funds. But if our local unemployment rate continues to increase, Berger says the federal spending cuts will hamper economic growth efforts that we might not be able to handle.
That's an enormous hit that this budget can't take.
For News 2, I'm Erica Bivens.
The figures given are preliminary based on the analysis by the Bureau of Economic Research. We'll have more on the sequester effects later on in the newscast. On Thursday evening, Transportation Services of St. John Inc. and Varlek Ventures Inc. provided a stipulation of facts stating at present rates, Transportation Services calculated an operating loss of $226,000, while Varlek Ventures has a $27,000 operating loss. Based on the projections, the parties proposed a new tourist category at $7 from Cruise Bay to Red Hook. Students would see a $1.25 increase and teachers a $1 increase. Baggage would see a $1.50 rise, but adult rates would remain the same. The hearing examiner still needs to make a recommendation. The territory's fiber optic trenching project is now 51% completed, according to officials who announced the project's status at the Virgin Islands Next Generation's Executive Board meeting on Thursday. VINGN's president and CEO Lawrence Kupfer also reported in the meeting that contractors are achieving great results with the project, and that installation of inner duct in existing WAPA conduits on St. Croix by All-Rounder System LLC and Trans-Tel Central Inc. have already started. Reports were also made to the board about the status of VINGN's cyber learning program, along with upcoming projects to provide digital literacy training to government agencies. During WAPA's governing board meeting on Thursday, the board voted to approve a number of contract and lease extensions. Board members also voted out of executive session to authorize the authority to borrow $15 million for a metering infrastructure project. News2's Erica Parsons has that story.
For the last 2 years, WAPA has been working on an advanced metering infrastructure project designed to improve services all around. On Thursday, its board voted to authorize WAPA to borrow $15 million to complete that project. As part of the requirement to get that loan, the board had to approve a 10-year financial forecast confirming the authority's creditworthiness. They voted out of executive session to do that. It will help WAPA move forward with the metering project that till now has been in the developing stages. According to a press release from WAPA, the completed project would mean meters can be read from WAPA's office. The new system would also reduce meter tampering, quickly identify faults in the system, and lay the communications groundwork for a smart grid to allow customers to control costs by monitoring real-time energy usage in their homes and businesses. All this in an effort to eventually provide savings to ratepayers as well as better utility service. During Thursday's meeting, the board also approved a 90-day time extension to Fortress Electric at no additional cost. It's to continue work on the transmission line from St. Croix's Richmond substation to the planned Midland substation. The board also approved the purchase of almost $3 million in heavy equipment for that Midland project. They approved contract extensions to June 29th with both Fortress Electric and Island Roads for the Main Street project on St. Thomas. Those are also at no additional cost, but rather to be in line with the 3-month extension given by FEMA to finish the project. Erica Parsons, News 2.
Now, the loan to complete the metering project will be at a 3 to 4% interest rate for a period of 20 years and will incur a net present value savings of $30 million for customers. Well, Women's History Month is an annual declared month worldwide that highlights the contributions of women to events in history and contemporary society. The theme this year is Women Inspiring Innovation Through Imagination, celebrating women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It is celebrated during March in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia, corresponding with International Women's Day on March 8th. And during October in Canada. National Women's History Month's roots goes back to March 8, 1857, when women from New York City factories staged a protest over working conditions. International Women's Day was first observed in 1909, but it wasn't until 1981 that Congress established National Women's History Week to be commemorated the second week of March. The Violence Against Women Act was recently passed by the U.S. House of Representatives as members voted in the affirmative of the Senate's bill on a vote of 286 to 138. The bill addresses concerns of LGBT, Native American, and immigrant victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, and is considered a victory for House Democrats who defeated Republicans who opted to leave those minorities out of protection. Congresswoman Christensen helped to gather Democratic votes in support of the Senate's bill, saying that she's pleased the bill passed and that programs will continue to receive needed funding. Well, as we mentioned earlier, the chance to avoid a series of harsh automatic spending cuts is all but gone. The president met this morning with Democrats and Republicans at the White House, but congressional leaders left without a deal. Tara Mergina reports from the White House.
President Obama talked to the media after meeting with top congressional leaders at the White House. He says the automatic spending cuts are going through.
This is not a win for anybody. This is a loss for the American people.
Lawmakers had a year and a half to come up with a budget compromise to avoid the harsh cuts. But Democrats pushed for tax hikes. Republicans wanted to trim more spending. And both sides are still pointing fingers.
They refused to budge on closing a single wasteful loophole to help reduce the deficit.
This discussion about revenue, in my view, is over. It's about taking on the spending problem here in Washington.
The cuts go into effect when the president signs the order. The law gives him until midnight to do so. Then dozens of federal agencies start scaling back. $85 billion, or about 3% of the budget, needs to be slashed this year. Almost half of the cuts will be at the Pentagon. General Ray Odierno says the Army alone will have to stop training 80% of its troops.
We might have to delay deploying people because they're not trained properly.
The cuts will take time to implement, and the full effect may not be seen for weeks. But the Obama administration says expect fewer police on the street, teacher layoffs, and flight delays.
And keeping our eye on the economy, stocks are showing little movement as massive spending cuts loom in Washington. This is the New York Stock Exchange with Scotiabank's Stock Market Watch. The Dow up 35, NASDAQ down, S&P 3. Coming up on News2, did you know that March 2nd is Read Across America Day? Well, the Department of Education encouraged students to open up the books to celebrate the occasion. Plus, Elena Christian Junior High School kicked off VI History Month Friday with a celebration honoring the voices of our ancestors. We'll be right back. With the flu season in high gear, the Department of Health decided to take flu outreach on the road Friday morning by visiting the Richmond Head Start Center in St. Croix and other centers in the territory to teach students and staff about ways to prevent the flu. News2's Janisha John brings us more from the Head Start's visit.
The Virgin Islands Department of Health has taken flu outreach on the road as the department recently teamed up with Human Services Head Start programs to teach children ways to prevent catching the flu.
We are always doing outreach in the Department of Health through immunization in terms of doing the flu shot. But because there has been an increase in the number of individuals coming down with the flu, and the flu is something that is serious because it can kill you. You can get pneumonia and even die from the flu. So we decided this year to take our campaign to the road and to start with the little kids.
Health officials on St. Croix started the outreach by visiting the Richmond Head Start Center Friday morning, teaching the students and staff with graphic slideshows and a catchy jingle on the proper ways to prevent spreading germs that can cause the flu.
Germs are things that we don't see. We don't know that they're on our hands. But if we make it a daily, everyday practice, like we were telling the kids, before you eat, wash your hands. After you use the bathroom, wash your hands.
I really think it's a great program. I'm glad that Department of Health came in and talked to the children. In this way, they get to hear somebody else other than the teachers telling them how to be healthy.
And while the program's overall goal is to promote flu prevention and increase vaccination coverage in the territory, getting children to understand how to avoid spreading germs is the first step towards reaching that goal.
They're the ones that's going to remember. They're the ones that's going to tell the parents, hey, mommy, we learned from Miss Greenwich. We got to do what? Sneeze in our clothes and cover our coughs. So that's the goal.
Nisha John, News 2.
The Department of Health's flu outreach program took place at a number of centers in the territory on Friday and continued with visitations and free hand sanitizer distributions in the community. Well, March 2nd is Read Across America Day, and the Department of Education celebrated the occasion Friday. Members of the governor's cabinet, his Children's and Families Council, and the clergy read to students across the territory. 20 second graders in Miss Bridgewater's class at the Juanita Gardine Elementary School were treated to a visit from Labor Commissioner Albert Bryan Jr. He read Bubble Trouble with lots of enthusiasm and quizzed the students afterwards. The campaign's goal is designed to make reading fun and get students excited about reading. Elena Christian Junior High School kicked off VI History Month Friday with a celebration honoring the voices of our ancestors. Students assumed the roles of significant people in VI history to honor David Hamilton Jackson, Cyril Emanuel King, and Judge Eileen Peterson. There were also musical selections by Elena's Steel Orchestra and special mention of the Hispanic members of our community who have made and are making important contributions to the VI.
Today, March 1st, is the official beginning of Virgin Islands History Month. During this month, we celebrate a culture and a history that has made us a proud people, and we pause to honor great men and women for their contribution.
48 children will take to the runway Sunday at the Alfredo Andrews Elementary School. JG Management USVI is hosting their first annual fundraiser, Kids Rock Fashion Show, at 3 p.m. The children range in ages from 5 to 13, and they will be showcasing clothes from local businesses.
We have 48 of St. Croix's most beautiful kids, all eager to rock the runway, modeling fashions from a variety of local businesses. We have kids from 22 different schools, public, Catholic, private. Kids Rock, to me, it's just the meaning of when I think of kids fashion. You know, kids have such a great personality, and I always wanted to do my first show and tailor it to kids.
Well, looking forward to some comedy. Some laughter is on tap at Stars Nightclub, featuring Vince Morris and AJ Finney. Now, with his smooth, charismatic style, this Columbus, Ohio native delivers passionate views on race, family, relationships, and life. He has been featured on BET, HBO, and his own half-hour comedy. Stylistically manic, artistically brilliant, AJ Finney's stream of consciousness is anything but forgettable. He has been characterized as a confident Midwest boy with a sharp tongue. He has performed at the Las Vegas Comedy Festival. Now again, that's tonight at 9 p.m. If you miss out tonight, you can catch the 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. show on Saturday. Stick around, your News 2 AccuWeather forecast is coming up next.